The snow came down sideways that Christmas Eve, a thin, stinging grit that found its way inside collars and boot tops and made the horses stamp and blow. Black Rock lay quiet under it, the kind of quiet that follows a long day of drinking and gambling and fighting, when men have either gone home to their wives or passed out in the alley behind the livery. The saloons were still lit, yellow lamplights spilling onto the boardwalk, but the voices inside had gone low and slurred. Elias Thorne rode in from the north, coat buttoned to the throat, hat pulled low. His horse, a gray gelding named Calder, picked its way through the ruts without prompting. They had come for salt and nails and a sack of flour, nothing more. Christmas meant little to Elias anymore, except that the stores closed early and the prices went up. He tied Calder outside the mercantile, but the door was already barred. The sign hung crooked, closed for the holiday. Elias stood a moment in the snow, breath fogging, then turned and walked the length of the street toward the livery. The wind carried the smell of wood smoke and whiskey and horse manure. He kept his hands out of his pockets, thumbs hooked in his belt, the way he always did when he came to town. People watched him from windows and doorways, but no one spoke. He had not spoken to many of them in years. The livery doors stood half open. Inside, the air was warmer, thick with hay dust and the sour smell of wet wool. A lantern hung from a nail, throwing long shadows across the stalls. Elias stepped in, stamping snow from his boots, and that was when he saw her. She lay curled on a pile of straw in the far corner, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around herself. A thin blanket, more rag than blanket, covered her shoulders. Hair was black and loose, tangled with straw, and her face was turned toward the wall. She did not move when he entered, but he knew she was awake. The breathing changed, grew shallow and careful. He stood still, letting his eyes adjust. She was Chinese, small, no more than 20. Her clothes were cotton, patched and faded, the kind worn by the women who worked the railroad camps or the laundry houses in the bigger towns. One sleeve was torn at the shoulder, bruised the color of old wine showed along her jaw. Elias did not speak right away. He walked to the tack room, found a tin cup, filled it from the water barrel, and carried it back. He set it on the straw, a few feet from her. Then he squatted, elbows on knees, and waited. She did not turn for a long time. When she did, her eyes were wide and dark, the whites showing all around. She looked at the cup, then at him. He lifted his chin toward it. "Drink," he said. Her hand came out slow, trembling. She took the cup, held it close to her chest, as if it might be taken back. She drank in small sips, eyes never leaving his face. When the cup was empty, she set it down and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "You hurt?" she asked. She shook her head once. "Quick. You got a name?" She looked at him a long moment. "Leeway." He nodded. "Elias Thorne." She said nothing. He glanced toward the doors. The snow was coming harder now, swirling in the lantern light. "You can't. Stay here. They'll find you come morning. Hostler's a talker." She pulled the blanket tighter. "I have nowhere." He rubbed the back of his neck. "You're running from somebody?" She did not answer. He stood. "I got a place. It's 20 miles north. Cabin barn. No neighbors close. You can sleep there tonight. Warm food. Come morning you can decide what to do." She watched him. "I won't touch you," he said. "You've got my word." She looked down at the straw. After a while, she nodded, small. He offered a hand. She stared at it, then took it. Her fingers were cold as iron. He helped her up. She was lighter than she looked. Outside, he boosted her onto Calder's back, then swung up behind. She sat stiff. Hands knotted in the mane. He turned the horse north, and they rode out of town without speaking. Snow fell thicker, muffling the hoofbeats. The world narrowed to the creak of leather, the horses breathing, the wind against their faces. The cabin sat in a shallow draw between two low ridges. Juniper and pinnon grew thick around it, sheltering the roof from the worst of the wind. A single window glowed with lamplight. He had left the wick burning low. The barn stood 50 yards off, doors open. Elias dismounted, helped Lee way down. She stood uncertain, looking at the house as if it might disappear. Inside, he said, She followed him up the steps. The door opened onto a single room, low-ceilinged, warmed by a cast-iron stove. A table, 2 chairs, a bunk against the wall. A shelf held tin plates, a coffee pot, a few books with cracked spines, as the floor was plank, swept clean. A rifle hung above the door. He took her coat thin. Patched hand hung it on a peg. Sit. She sat at the table, put coffee on, then sliced bread and bacon from the larder. When the bacon was hot, he slid it onto a plate with the bread and set it in front of her. She ate slowly, careful not to drop crumbs. He watched her from the stove. "You want to tell me who you're running from?" he asked. She swallowed. "Mr. Harlan? Who's he?" "Man who brought me from San Francisco. Said I would marry his brother. Instead, he sold me to work in his house. Then he sold me again. It's Mr. Caldwell." Cleus poured coffee into 2 mugs. "Caldwell, the one with the big spread on the Rio." She nodded. "He hurt you?" She looked at her hands. He wanted more than work. Elias sat across from her. "He'd come after you. He will." He drank his coffee. "You're safe here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll see." She looked at him then. Really looked. "Why?" He shrugged. "Cold night, Christmas." She said nothing. More. When she finished eating, he made a pallet on the floor near the stove with blankets and a sheepskin. She lay down without protest. He blew out the lamp. In the dark, he heard her breathing slow, then steady. He sat in the chair by the window, rifled across his lap, and watched the snow fall. Morning came gray and still. The snow had stopped, leaving a thin crust over the ground. Elias rose early, fed the horses, split wood. Leeway was already up when he came back in, folding the blankets with careful hands. "You sleep?" he asked. "Some." He nodded. "It's ride into town, see what's said." She looked alarmed. "You stay here," he said. "Doors barred, rifles loaded. You know how to use one?" She shook her head. "I'll show you." He took the rifle down, loaded it, handed it to her. "Point and pull. Don't aim with the barrel. Aim with your eyes. You understand?" She nodded. He left her there and rode south. Black Rock was waking slow. Smoke rose from chimneys. Men stood outside the saloon nursing hangovers. Elias tied Calder and walked the boardwalk. Kate kept his face neutral. Inside the mercantile, old man Pritchard was sweeping. "Thorne," he said, "missed you yesterday." Was closed. Pritchard grunted. "Heard some talk last night. Caldwell's girl run off?" Elias leaned on the counter. "What girl?" "Chinese. Bought her fair and square, he says. Paid good money. She lit out Christmas Eve. Caldwell's offering $50 for her return." Leah said nothing. Pritchard eyed him. "You seen her?" "No." Pritchard sniffed. "Sheriff's looking too. Says she stole from Caldwell. Jewelry or some such." Elias bought his nails and flour. Paid, left. Outside. The sheriff, Dom Rourke, was waiting, leaning against a post, toothpick in his mouth. Rourke was tall, soft around the middle, star pinned to his vest. He smiled when he saw Elias. "Thorne, Merry Christmas." Graf. "Ride in last night? Late? See anything unusual?" "Snow?" Rourke chuckled. "We got a problem. Caldwell's missing a girl. Janice says she took some things. You know how they are." Elias looked at him. Rourke's smile faded. "If you hear anything, you'll let me know." Elias touched his hat and walked to his horse. He rode home slow, thinking. $50 was more than most men in Black Rock saw in a month. Caldwell was rich, owned half the county. Rourke was in his pocket. If they found Leeway, she would be dragged back, beaten, maybe worse. Or sold again. When he reached the cabin, Leeway was at the stove, boiling water. She had swept the floor, straightened the blankets. The rifle stood propped in the corner. "You're still here?" he said. "Where else?" He set the sack on the table. "They're looking for you. Caldwell says you stole." Her face tightened. "I took nothing. He gave me a ring. Said it was for his brother. Then he took it back. Said I was his now." Elias nodded. "They'll come here eventually, Rourke. Knows I ride alone. He'll think to check." She looked at the door. "I can go. Not yet." She met his eyes. "Why help me?" He did not answer right away. He thought of his wife, Mary, dead for years now. Fever took her quick. He had been out on the range, branding calves. By the time he returned, she was gone. He'd buried her. Under the cottonwood behind the barn, sometimes he still talked to her, low, when the nights were long. I couldn't help someone once, he said. I won't make that mistake again. She studied him. You loved her? Yes. She looked. Away, they ate in silence, beans, cornbread, coffee. After, he showed her how to load the rifle again. She practiced until her hands were steady. Night fell early. The wind rose, rattling the shutters. Leah sat by the stove, cleaning his revolver. Li Wei sat opposite, hands folded in her lap. You ever celebrate Christmas? He asked. In China? No. Here, I saw the lights in San Francisco. People sang. I liked it. He nodded. Mary used to bake pies. She'd make me eat 3 slices. Li Wei smiled, small. She was good to you. She was. They sat quiet. The fire snapped. You can stay, he said. Long as you want. She looked at him. I mean it. She nodded. The next day they rode out together, checking fence lines. She sat behind him on Calder, arms around his waist. The snow had melted in patches, leaving the ground slick. They did not speak much. When they returned, she helped him rub down the horse, her movements sure. Days passed. She learned the routines, milking the cow, feeding the chickens, mending clothes. He taught her to shoot the rifle. She was quick, accurate. At night they sat by the fire, talking little, but the silence was comfortable. One evening she asked about Mary. She was from Ohio, he said. Came west with her family. They died on the trail. Cholera. I met her in Santa Fe. Married her 3 weeks later. Li Wei listened. She wanted children. We tried. Nothing took. In the fever. He looked into the fire. I should have been here. Li Wei reached across the table, touched his hand. You could not know. He did not pull away. Weeks turned to months. Spring came, green and sudden. The cottonwood budded. Li Wei planted a garden behind the cabin beans. Squash herbs she remembered from China. Elias watched her work, hoe in hand, hair tied back. She sang sometimes, low songs in her own language. One afternoon, Rourke rode up. Elias was splitting. Li Wei was inside. Rourke dismounted, walked over. Thorn. Sheriff, it's been a while, has. Heard you got company? Elias rested the axe on the block. You heard wrong? Rourke smiled. Caldwell's still looking. Says she's his property, contract and all. No contracts on people. Rourke shrugged. Law's flexible out here. Elias looked at him. You come alone? For now. You tell Caldwell if he comes, he'll leave in a box. Yes. Rourke's smile slipped. You threatening an officer? I'm telling you. Rourke mounted. You're making a mistake, Thorn. He rode off. That night, Elias sat on the porch. Rifle across his knees, Li Wei came out, sat beside him. They will come, she said. Yes, I can leave. No. She looked at the stars. You do not have to die for me. I'm not dying. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Thank you. He put an arm around her. 2 days later they came. 4 men, Caldwell in the lead. Rourke rode beside him. They stopped at the edge of the yard. Elias stood on the porch, rifle in hand. Li Wei stood behind him, pistol at her side. He had given her his old Colt. Caldwell was a big man, red-faced, wearing a silk vest. Thorn, I want my property. She's not yours. Contract says otherwise. Show it. Caldwell laughed. You know how this works, Elias said. Right out, Rourke drew his revolver. Step aside, Thorn. Li Wei stepped forward. I will go. Elias looked at her. No. She met his eyes. I will not see you killed. Caldwell grinned. Smart girl. Elias raised the rifle. Last chance. Rourke fired first. The bullet took Elias in the shoulder, spun him. He fired back once, twice. Rourke fell from the saddle. Caldwell's horse reared. The other men drew. Li Wei shot, steady. One man dropped. Another fired, grazing her arm. She did not cry out. Elias staggered forward, firing. Caldwell took a round in the chest, fell backward. The last man turned his horse and ran silence. Elias sank to his knees. Blood soaked his shirt. Liwei ran to him, pressed her hands to the wound. "Hold on," she said. He looked at her. "You're safe." She tore cloth from her skirt, bound the wound. "We need a doctor. No doctor in Blackrock. Then we go to Santa Fe." He smiled, weak. "You giving orders now?" She kissed his forehead. "Yes." They buried Rourke and Caldwell in the draw. The other man never came back. Word spread slow. No one came looking. Summer passed. Elias healed, slow. Liwei nursed him, changed bandages, cooked, kept the place running. When he could walk again, they sat under the cottonwood where Mary was buried. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For the blood." She shook her head. "He gave me a home." He looked at the grave. "She'd have liked you." Liwei smiled. "I think so." That fall, they married in Santa Fe. Quiet, no ceremony but the justice of the peace and 2 witnesses. She took his name, though she kept her own in private. They returned to the ranch. Years later, on another Christmas Eve, snow fell again. The cabin was larger now, a second room added. Children's voices came from inside. 2 boys, a girl. Liwei stood on the porch, watching Elias teach the oldest to shoot. She walked to him, slipped her hand in his. "Come home with me if you want," she said, soft. He looked at her, smiled. "I already did." They stood together, watching the snow fall, listening to the children laugh. The wind carried the smell of pine and smoke and bread baking. Somewhere a horse nickered. The world was quiet and good.